Hello everybody, I am Brother Kenneth Deel. I'm glad to be with you again on this episode of The Art of the Deals. We're going to talk about the little battles against the demonic. Sometimes it's more vexation, sometimes it can be oppression, even temptation. The same strategy, it's just stepped up a bunch. And this is these little battles you can call skirmishes that are done in order to try to wear you down. And the small battles is that sometimes it returns, it's stronger. People can have this with depression as well and anxiety. And then you're supposed to attack it immediately, defend yourself, in other words, by attacking it back. You know, in other words, using bind, rebuke, prayers, those kind of things. And then you'll start to wear it down, but it's not going to happen immediately. Everybody expects immediately now with the exorcisms. But this is a way to wear it down and win the battle properly. Because if something's cast out too quick and you didn't get your side of the battle done in an order, and your tolerance built up and your spiritual life built up as to fill the hole that's going to be left when you kick that spirit out, or someone kicks it out on your behalf. Basically, heaven's doing it, but using the individual, even the priest and the laity or whoever might end up being the ultimate one to help give it the first orders to hit the road. But this is something that's all part of what we call our spiritual warfare plan of action, and it is a vital step in moving forward with deliverance and exorcism, or whatever you call it, liberation, a little more kind of a lesser-known word. It sounds kind of religion or denomination neutral, doesn't it? Okay, so let me give you an example. Let's go to the extreme cases first. Usually by the time they're having step-in possessions, it seems like these little things they do will actually cause them to jump in and then take over their consciousness. And that's what we call step-in possessions. And it doesn't mean they're going to be kicking and screaming right there. They'll be somber unless they're cornered or threatened, and then they'll act out then. Okay, so let's say the most common thing is that when people get oppressed, they have the voice, instead of tempting them more in a subliminal level, and it reaches your mind and you don't know your thoughts from their thoughts, which happens in temptation. And when it gets to oppression, it's a voice that's basically physically manifesting itself as some form of a voice or not. It's not necessarily like some sort of horrid voice. They make it so that it's a voice that you know, like a friend of yours would be. Is it going to be a woman for a woman and a man for a man? I don't know. That varies. You know, I mean, specifically, it's not going to be the same each time, but it's not going to be this his typical kind of stereotype demon voice like I make fun of sometimes, like, why don't you go over, like that. Don't expect that. It's going to be more effective to sound like a friend, or might even be, for a child, it's a child spirit or something. It's the end up with a child who's oppressed, just in the way they present themselves to be accepted. Like I said, child spirit, UFO alien, a beautiful woman who died in a car wreck when you're a teenager and you're lonely, or vice versa, a boy, a teenage boy, whatever their appeal is. And, various things even from there. So if the masquerade continues, when it becomes the voice, even if the masquerade is gone and they know it's a spirit, it's going to use a voice that's going to be more pleasing and more acceptable. Not unless using the scary voice, but because it's scaring and terrifying and all that stuff, is actually it's the design to bring them down by the fear. And most they would try to still go on there as your friend or something. They switched their strategies. The Donovan case, I'm mentioning a famous case. I didn't work on it. Well, it's famous somewhat. It's in the Gerald Brittle book. He had where the teenage girl thought she was talking to a teenage boy, and over the time she's using the Ouija board, it would move by itself and answer the questions, and it would say things like, "You look great with your hair up today," or something like, "You're prettier than those girls in school," those kind of things. And then at some point or another, there's a relationship built up. I don't know how long it went. A month though. Because it takes months to get that advanced, where you just sit there and put it on the thing and it'll move it by itself. You don't even have to touch it anymore. And the strategy is building up on trying to get them in a relationship. You've seen how people, marriages break up because people are on Facebook and they fall in love with the person they never even met. They're just going by their pictures and their texts. Isn't that strange? Aren't humans strange? But that's what this is relying on, because they knew that. They know the architect of the human mind enough to, to work against it in this fashion. So at some point or another, because the relationship built up, with the woman herself, and, the communication, there's a line of trust that goes on. She starts to have feelings for her, like this cyber cheating, and that's what they call it, because it's emotionally cheating. Well, she's just a teenage girl, so it's not like she's cheating on anybody or anything like that, but she had broken, the natural law on necromancy, and it's not a good spirit. It never is. Good spirits aren't allowed to do that for that same reason, because it's tempting, and we said, God, lead us not into temptation. That's not us asking something we have to ask. It's there by default. But what it's doing is it's reminding us that God does not do that. That's in the Our Father, in case you didn't know. That God doesn't let good spirits talk to you if it's going to tempt you to keep trying to contact them every day and day and day and day. Because, the reality would be that if you contacted, somehow, actually, the spirit contacted you, and you become obsessed with it, and you go from, like Samuel being conjured by King Saul. Once you try to contact them, it can be a demon and appear and look and act just like the other one. Well, not exactly. There'll be something off. They can't do that exactly in all cases that we know of and studied and so forth, so that it can continue on. I wondered this about Blessed Mother apparitions too, that if one apparition might start off and it's 8 days, it is the Blessed Mother, and then the person had changed. But see, I don't know. I think God would know that. So I don't think it ever was the Blessed Mother, and it turns out false later, and some of these weird things come out of the messages. That sounds totally not Christian. And then you go, why was it good at first and now it's not? Well, probably for the same reason. The hook. Let's, say some legitimate things and stuff, get them hooked into it to where they're going to believe everything, I say, and then throw the stuff out that's going to, relativism, for example. All religions lead to God, which is impossible. If you know anything about any religions whatsoever, you can know that. Very, not only fundamentally different, but, greatly different in some ways, as much as good and evil can be, as you know. So, you have to go after it with prayers that are going to counter it immediately when it speaks up. You don't want to speak in anything. It doesn't matter what it says, what it doesn't say. Once you've heard one voice, or you get an indication that spirit is there trying to say something, don't even wait for them to form words, or even if you don't understand the words. You hear something, even phantom noises, say a prayer right away. Phantom noises are when these spirits will imitate sounds to wake you up. That's the one of the common ones. Wake you up, keep you from falling asleep, and it just may happen during the day. It's kind of like poltergeist in a way, but no, it's more like it's generated sound. It's not like they're actually knocking. But sometimes, of course, these crashes, they identify, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes you'll hear a crash like there's a shelf in the other room and someone just shoved it over, and there's nothing like that found in the basement or anything like that. It's not one of those things where it can go either way. It can be a generated phantom sound, or it can be they actually made a mess in the other room. In that case, they're not doing it probably just to raise the sound, maybe getting to be destructive. Okay. In these battles, here's what you got to do, is that when the spirit starts up and starts to talk, make noises or anything, go after it immediately. I mute you in the name of Jesus Christ, and by his precious blood I bind you at the foot of the cross. And you can repeat that. And you might want to bless your house too, to go through this whole thing. But see, if you don't do this stuff, it still builds up. If you don't do it right, you do it once, and that's it. In the early stages, you can probably do it once, and it doesn't matter. But once you can hear it talking all the time, like it's trying to engage in conversations, and unfortunately, in these cases where the person actually had conversations with it, not only beginning to listen instead of ignore, but actually speaking back to it and then get dialogue back, that's when you're in trouble. And then you got to teach them these things, and then they have to go and do these every time it speaks up, and it seems really dragging. Like, is this working or not? And I keep telling them, I said, you might have to do this for 30 to 90 days because you gave it such a leg up, boost, I'm sorry, into its stage that it is now got permission to talk back and forth with you, like letting a vampire in the door. Now he's in your house. Now he can come and go as he pleases. Remember that old lore? There's actually some truth in that about demonic spirits. That's where a lot of these come from, these lures and myths. All right, so it's the same thing. And I tell this to people because it's the only way to deal with it is you have to catch it each time. And then it gets kind of frustrating because it seems like, they're not listening and doing it. That's because they're so used to using it and they're a little bit worn by that. And that's the thing to concern. And if we aren't concerned and tell them to do it, they may be concerned. They'll stop when they're threatened, because it's already frightening that these things are talking to them like this to begin with, and that there's a manifested voice coming out of nowhere. This stuff freaks them out. So it's not as easy as it sounds. I wish it was. But it's all about that persistence. We say this with the prayers, and all that stuff. That when you go over time, that persistence is key. That you have to do those prayers for the length of time that we recommend, and we have to tell people constantly when we talk to them again. And I'm amazed how many times they'll say, "Well, I did them yesterday." They're not doing the prayers every day. You have to do it every day. That's persistence is important. It works that way a little bit, but when you're beating it down, you're trying to get break that oppression down and get her to reverse and back off. And at least that's what the person has to do in their self-help mode. And you know what? That will be a longer term when they do it. And that's why we keep telling, we don't want people to just have an exorcist come over and do it, because it'll come back fast, it'll come back worse, and then they're going to be in worse shape than they were before. That's why we don't send an exorcist over right away, or we don't do it ourselves either. Okay, so the prayers can also be used for moments when you're feeling suicidal, if you have problems with depression. But you have to want to. But people succumb to these feelings so much, they don't try to pray them off, just like with the people who are addicted to porn or something like that. They have to want it to go away, and then pray it off. And then every time it comes, they pray it, when it's in their mind. When, if some image makes them think, pray it off right away. These are these little battles. And with a voice, it's more plain. It's right in front of you, because the voice can keep going and talking, and you're like, I mute you in the name of Jesus Christ. That doesn't work on me. I mute you. You're wearing him out. Each time you're saying that, he's going, ooh, but he's not totally not feeling it. They'll feel the pain, like when they go into a house and there's a crucifix on the wall. They hate seeing that thing. They hate being in the presence of that. That's why they'll kick it off the wall, turn it upside down, or whatever. So the prayers, being specific, can be for anything, like I said, that you struggle with in temptation. Get it at the early level. Don't wait it to go all the way to oppression. And anytime you're getting these thoughts, stop them before they go anywhere by saying the same prayers. Doesn't need to be manifested, oppressed, or oppression. Just do it right away. And do it for several minutes. I tell people with anxiety problems, say that prayer and bless yourself at least 3 times for 3, 4, or 5 minutes. 5 minutes is about right, so that the anxiety will just dissipate and lift off. Now, don't confuse anxiety with stomach issues and stuff, because you can take a zinc tablet on an empty stomach and it gives you the same feeling that anxiety does, which is kind of strange. Just a chemical reaction, because the feeling that you get in an anxiety is often a chemical reaction from your body, and that zinc does to your stomach what anxiety can do, I guess, to some degree. So you can confuse that, and then you'll be like, why isn't it going away? Well, think about what you ate. Undigested piece of beef that, How much more should I say about this thing? I think it's a matter of the prayers. If the simple prayers aren't short enough, aren't long enough, but you would say something besides that basic prayer. In the name of Jesus Christ, by his precious blood, I rebuke you, spirits of anxiety, or, I mute you and bind you at the foot of the cross of Jesus. And you say them 5 times because you got to hammer at them a little bit and drive them away from the pain of being driven that way, because a lot of times at some stage we give them permission. It's harder to send them away, because you invited it in. It does make it harder, and that's why it's harder and takes longer to get it off. And it might take several exorcisms. Minor exorcisms, we don't do the full rite, and church doesn't. When it's just an oppression, they'll use the minor rites and deliverance prayers and stuff. Okay, so I hope I covered all the bases on this stuff. I tell you what, hey guys, like this video, please subscribe, and ask any questions below in the comments if you have any questions, and we'll follow up on it. And we'll have to add if there's too many, we'll just have to do another video, but we'll answer them right there on in the comments below. Okay, guys, God bless, and we'll see you next time, or rather, you'll see me.